Are we bad at languages? Have you ever noticed that when you ask an English speaker if they speak another language, it's never good enough just to say no? We really enjoy putting ourselves down in the process. So we'll say things like, speak another language? I did French in school for 5 years and all I remember is bonjour. Or you might hear, I know I'm no good at languages. We've been going to Malaga every summer for 15 years and all I know is the word for beer. Or my personal favourite, Spanish. I can barely speak English. These are the jokes that we've all heard and maybe even used, but why is it so accepted to put ourselves down like this when it comes to language learning? And how does this negative attitude affect us when we're trying to tackle problems we face, such as the UK having the fewest number of bilinguals anywhere in Europe? Or problems such as our dwindling number of language students, where the average A-level language class has 4 students. So that means at A-level, we don't even have enough students to fill a car, never mind a classroom. Are English speakers doomed to only speak their language in an ever more bilingual world? What are the causes of this and what are the solutions? So I think it comes down to 3 things. Our experience growing up, our experience going abroad, and our experience learning languages. So the first one is our experience growing up. If you're like me and the majority of people who grew up in the UK and Ireland, you only spoke one language at home. This means that we have little to no contact with other languages growing up, and it also means that we depend heavily on the education system to teach us these languages. But when we go to primary school, it doesn't get much better. I didn't learn any languages in primary school. It was never talked about. It was never mentioned. I don't even think I had the concept of languages. And besides, most primary school teachers aren't qualified to teach languages, and why would they be? This is the only place in Europe, where it's not mandatory to learn another language at primary school. By the time we go to secondary school, where specialised language teachers are available, some argue that we've already missed that critical period, those early first few years, when it's easier to learn a language. And let's face it, even if you do make an effort in secondary school, teenagers aren't the most supportive bunch. And I remember there was a kid in my class who was praised by our French teacher for his wonderful pronunciation, and later criticised by the rest of the class for not speaking French in a perfect Belfast accent like the rest of us. This is the experience of the average person with languages growing up in the UK and Ireland. This was my experience. You see, I currently teach languages in a secondary school here in Belfast, but growing up, I hated them. I didn't see the point in them. I scraped the C at GCSE Spanish. I didn't keep it on for A-level. And it was only as an adult, when going abroad and travelling and speaking to people, that I really fell in love with them. You see, I kept having these experiences that slowly changed my mind, showing me how important languages were. Small things like paying 50 cents for a bag of fruit at the market when all the other foreigners were getting charged $3. Or memorable things like a man in Tanzania who literally lost control of his bike because I greeted him in Swahili. And not only did he invite me to his house that evening to have dinner with his family, but he spent like 10 minutes gathering locals to show them that he'd found an Mzungu, a foreigner, who spoke a bit of Swahili. You see, I kept having these interesting encounters with people. And I remember thinking, God, I did languages in school. I did Spanish for 5 years. And I thought it was just about going to the train station and buying a ticket, or asking where the castle was and what time it was open to. I didn't know it was more than just a tool for communication, that it's actually a key to other people's cultures, a key to communities where people will open their arms to welcome you in and show you their culture. Because you see, very often, growing up in the UK and Ireland, we just think that languages are a means to an end. It's just communication, and if they can understand me, perfect. So I'll just talk at them in English, and that'll be fine. And what's worse, we reduce it to an academic subject. When we think about Spanish or French or German, we think about a subject on a timetable. But languages don't live on timetables or in classrooms or in exam papers. They instead come alive when we go abroad, or at least in theory they do. Point 2 is our experience going abroad. A couple of years ago, I went on holiday with a few friends, and about 6 weeks before, I decided I was going to learn a bit of the local language. So I got a book, I subscribed to a website, started learning a few phrases, and I got a couple of one-to-one sessions to practice the pronunciation. I was really eager to get to the country, to see what I'd sort of learned, to put into practice and to show off, to see how far I could get. But when I got there, I had a very different experience. You see, we got off the plane and we were welcomed to the country in English. We didn't get lost because all the signs in the airport were in English, and the taxi driver had enough to get by as well. The hotel staff were well versed in English. and the entertainment was easy enough to understand because guess what language it was in? I didn't really get a chance to get homesick because when I went to the supermarket, I recognized all the songs on the radio from back home, and I didn't go hungry either because the menus were translated for me. The other thing that really stood out was the huge amount of people that seemed to be either capable of speaking English or in the process of learning it, and who insisted on using it with me when I tried to use their language. And I'm sure this was done with the best of intentions and to facilitate communication, but how did it leave me feeling? Like an idiot, like I was embarrassing myself, like I just wanted to switch back to English. There were so many points in that holiday where I thought, what's the point? Have we become the victims of the success of the English language in that we can't escape it even if we try? Now, there were moments, thankfully, on the holiday that I was able to use the language, positive moments, and this abundance of English is more so true in holiday destinations and tourist resorts, and it doesn't represent the whole country. But what happens is we're so protected by the strength of the English language that we don't step outside our comfort zone, and we very often think that the whole world speaks English. The same way if you spend all day, every day in a dance studio, you might think the whole world can dance salsa. It's only when you step out of that you realize that's not the case. I see English a bit like signal on your phone. If you stay in your tourist resort, you'll probably have 4G English wherever you go. But if you step off the beaten track, you'll suddenly be in airplane mode sooner than you realize. Not everybody speaks English. I have friends who don't speak English or they're not comfortable speaking it. Friendships I wouldn't have made had I not learned their language. And I've even seen extremes of people that have had no contact with the English-speaking world. I met a group of people in Cambodia that were baffled by the idea of Ireland. They just couldn't place it in their mind. And even when I showed them on a map, they ended up saying, we're just going to go ahead and say that you're French, because that sounds close enough. And of course, it won't be the first time that I've mistaken Belfast for Paris, so easily done. Now, even after the negative experiences, the shaky education system, and a string of Thomas Cook holidays to Benidorm, you decide that you still want to learn a language. Don't think that it's all smooth sailing from there. Because if you love putting yourself down, and we do, then languages are perfect for you. We doubt our pronunciation. We think we have a bad memory. We tell everybody how bad we were at languages when we're at school, and we even start to blame our age. Because what happens is instead of it being a fun and enriching experience, we're too worried about embarrassing ourselves to even enjoy it. We're too worried about making an idiot out of ourselves, just the way I was when I went on holiday with my friends. And what's worse, we even think we're going to make a mistake and offend somebody by saying something in their language, that we're going to insult them. A couple of years ago, I worked in a summer camp in England, and I worked with a Spanish fella called Lucas, and he just seemed like a quiet fella. He just kept to himself and didn't really bother much. And one week we were taking the kids on a trip, and I was sat beside him on the coach, and we were speaking in Spanish, and we spoke for about 2 hours, and I remember thinking, oh God, no, he's quite outgoing, he's sociable. And as we were getting off the coach, he said to me, do you know, like, I just feel like I can't be myself here. He said, my English is so low. He said, in Spain, I'm the life and soul of the party. He said, here, I'm a different person. And I said to him, do you think so? Like a different person? And I'll always remember what he said to me. He said, llevo semanas aquí y eres la única persona que sabe quién soy. He said, I've been here for weeks, and you're the only person that knows who I am. Do you think he cared about my grammar or my pronunciation? Did he sound offended? Speaking Spanish to Lucas didn't offend him. It allowed him to be who he was. So let's take stock. Bad experiences growing up, English everywhere when we go abroad, and us putting ourselves down when we finally try to learn a language. So what's the solution? Well, the government probably isn't going to change anything anytime soon, so it falls on us. If you're a parent, expose your child to language early on, with music, with cartoons, so they can get an ear for it. If you're a teacher, you don't have to be fluent to introduce a few words into your classroom, a bit of language or culture. And for you, how many times have you said, oh God, I'd love to learn another language, and we don't? What's holding you back? It may not be easy for us, but I can't think about the experiences that I would have missed out on had I not learned other languages. I could have read about the Spanish Civil War in a book, but why would I when I could speak to 93-year-old Carmen who grew up in the south of Spain in the midst of it? What about Lucas, who said I was the only one that knew him because I spoke his language? Or what about your fella in Tanzania that nearly went over the handlebars on his bike because I said good afternoon to him? My original question was, are we bad at languages? I don't think so. I think the odds are stacked against us. I think we don't realize how important languages are, and the education system doesn't prioritize it, and we're all too good at putting ourselves down in the process. What experiences are you missing out on because you only speak your language? And who are you not allowing to be themselves because you don't speak theirs? So my challenge to you, have a go at it. Make the next holiday different than the last. It doesn't have to be perfect. As my mother always says to me, just do your best, and you'll be surprised where it takes you. Merci, gracias, gramagat, and thank you very much.